Has the UK government become a control freak?
Hello and welcome to the Mark and Pete Show. Many people believe that governments are there to set policy, but not necessarily to control every aspect of your life. Some people are concerned that even things like the census is delving far too deeply into information about you as a citizen. In the United Kingdom, many people believe that Boris Johnson is just simply far too controlling. In fact, he's completely out of control. Well, we have the answers on Mark and Pete. And here's a thought. When governments are controlling and constantly polling, when their police are patrolling and always cajoling, when new laws keep unrolling and who needs bankrolling, when there's too many taxes and tariffs and tolling, when it seems like they're spying and constantly trolling, we all feel trapped and need lots of consoling. Clergyman Pete, I ask you, do you believe that the UK government is becoming far too controlling and intrusive?
Yes, well, I do think that, yes. I think that what has happened is that there's always seemed a good reason why the government needs to take on extra powers. That was exemplified when, to cope with the pandemic, so-called in 2020, the government passed a bill, the Coronavirus Act, which, drawing on the law, the Contingencies Law from Emergency Contingencies Law for 2004. Was allowed the government wide-ranging powers because it was an emergency. Now, the purpose of that law at the time was to help cope with things like terrorist attacks, which unfortunately we'd been suffering from in this country. But this was then applied to this disease and coping with the fallout from it. So it seems that it was misapplied. That's one thing. But also, once you had started down that route, it was very difficult to let it go. So the initial passing of that legislation was for 6 months, then it was renewed for another 6 months. And this week, as we broadcast this, the government's going to vote on it, bring it to a vote again in Parliament, whether to extend it once more.
Yes.
I think it's been controlling already. It's a bit of a control freak, as we said in the
Well,
in
have the freaks just simply got out of hand?
Have taken over the asylum. Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah.
Well, we'll explore it a little bit more. So you're right, there is a bill that's going to go through Parliament, but there is a few things that have led up to this point. Some citizens are concerned about how the government has information about you, meaning, let's see one point which I referenced, which is about the census. Now, every 10 years we get the census. It's the idea being is that we know how many people are living in the United Kingdom. Many governments do this, but what was interesting this time, it was the first time that it actually talked about your gender and, more importantly, your creed. Are you heterosexual? Are you a homosexual? Are you a lesbian? Are you whatever you are? Now, some people thought, well, why do you need to know this? Now, I will say, and this is for our United Kingdom listeners, but it does remind me of a very old episode of Yes Minster, who was the Minister for Administrative Affairs. And there was one particular episode where the database was being set up pretty much in line with the census. And the whole basis of the episode was around, well, why do you need this information and what are you going to do with it? But nobody could actually answer the question. And I guess the question now is, do we really need to know every aspect of what we are as citizens? Is there civil liberties there, and perhaps the idea that maybe we can think about how we can control our own data? And I suppose that's one aspect of the society that we live in. Data is really, really important. Governments rely on it, especially when they are trying to sort of plan. But there are some areas where perhaps, Clergyman Pete, I wonder whether we go too far. So this census, we'll talk about other subjects, but let's talk about the census.
Yeah, sure.
Did you have a concern filling out? And incidentally, for our international listeners, it was compulsory. I say that in the sense that if you didn't do it, you would be fined £1,000.
Well, it's
so
interesting.
It's compulsory.
Yeah.
Which in itself is controlling.
Yes, you are fined if you don't fill it in. It's interesting that the main way that people would know that you were there is by filling in the census. So it's not sure how many people actually get fined. But yes, that is a bit controlling, and and if I didn't want them to know, maybe I'd pay the £1,000. My life is an open book, so of course there's absolutely no problem with
it's got no pages, no words on it at all. It's a completely
I think
book.
that the census, the reason that I don't find the census so much of an issue is it's every 10 years, so it's not such an imposition because they're not constantly finding out about you. But there is an issue with because they asked a more personal question this time. They asked about first. They would ask you what biological sex you were, and then they ask you what sex you identified as later.
Correct.
Which is interesting. That is that the sort of thing you should put? They should be asking you. Now, there was actually an option to not say that, so that's fair enough. So I don't find the census too much of a problem, but I don't think it should be compulsory.
Yes. Okay. Well, in which case then, the question...
I mean, I would have done it if it wasn't compulsory. I would probably still have done it.
Yes. I think most citizens are familiar with doing it, but it's to what level of detail you go. So here we go. In the society, we're just on this subject. Will they want to know your DNA? Will they want to know more about your medical history over the last 10 years?
I suppose the question we could say is...
have you had a COVID-19 vaccine?
There's been talk of not having the census in the next 10 years because it's quite expensive to administrate. But the one thing that they could ask, yes, is we want to find out, just purely for administrative purposes, and we won't prejudice the way that you're treated at all, because of course we keep your identity secret, but we'd like to know if you'd had the COVID-19 vaccination and whether it's up to date.
Yes.
Because in 10 years' time, you will have you've had at least 10, probably 20 jabs, probably more.
Yes.
As they keep
Pincushions galore.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. But the information there's other information that they keep. If I just take it on to something related to what we were just talking about. Not long ago, we had this GDPR regulation, which was across Europe, that you weren't allowed to keep data apart from for a specific purpose and for a specific limited amount of time. And other than that, you'd have to destroy the records.
To be precise, there's a clause in it which says you have the right to anonymity, and you have the right to ask any organisation to be able to withdraw that data.
Yeah. Now, but they're not meant to. The part of the law that I was getting at was passing on information from one list to another, from one organisation to another of a list that you have for a different purpose. Now, if you don't take the vaccination that you've been told to take, your information is passed from your local doctor to the agency that is doling out the vaccines. They shouldn't be doing that. Your information that you're passing on your patient information to a third party without your permission.
Yes.
So I'm just. You may think that's a small thing. I guess it could be. It seems benign, but it is once again more power taken by a government agency over your lives, getting more information, and information is worth to people who want to rule your lives, who want to be controlling. Information is gold, isn't it? So it's just a step in that direction.
Information
One more step
is important. Now, information is one thing, but even if a citizen, for example, wanted to take, as you alluded to say the idea that, they just weren't going to impart information. The challenge with that is that we're starting to see, and it's already happening in mainland Europe, where they're putting initiatives in place to say if you have not had, for example, a COVID-19 vaccine, you will not be able to travel for your holidays and potentially even for work, meaning that this is what I could see that the UK government would adopt too. And I could also see that being rolled out to many other international communities. Now, therefore, if your job relies on you travelling, that could be a problem.
It could
Similarly,
be.
again, if you wanted to take your family on a holiday, even if your job was purely UK based, you would be restricted. Again, there's an element of control. Now, some people will say, I can hear them screaming at us now, saying, yes, but surely it's in the interest of everyone to be able to have some evidence to show that they are medically cared for, I say that in the loosest sense, and they've had the appropriate vaccinations or medicines where it's appropriate. Now, many people will know that this is not uncommon. If you go to certain communities, you are advised to actually take certain types of medicines. It's not necessarily COVID-19. It could be meningitis. It could be tetanus. It could be other things.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Yeah, that's great. I mean, so if it's to travel to a certain place and you need it, because, for example, there's a prevalent disease in that place, then I guess that's fair enough. But however, if you are having to take the passport with you around the country because you have to have had the relevant vaccination just to travel, that's when it's a step too far. I mean, I think just for other reasons, it's wrong to insist that you have this particular sort of vaccination that's been widely disseminated in Britain, because it doesn't protect you from COVID-19, and that's stated up front, and it doesn't stop you from passing it on. It is hoped, and I believe it does, stop you from dying from it. That's good for you, but that doesn't affect other people, so you shouldn't have to have a passport. It's an irrelevance. Yes. It's a misunderstanding.
Yes, correct.
Of what these vaccines can achieve.
Yes,
it's not that the vaccines are a bad idea. It's that this information and a passport or some sort of documentation telling people that you've had it is unnecessary. But it's bound to happen.
But it's
because the government's a control freak. I mean, that's what we're seeing. It was bound to happen. We're seeing a pattern here.
It doesn't end there, because we're going to switch subjects.
Absolutely.
Now, we all know and we all like to travel in different ways. Some people like public transport, but a lot of us have vehicles. Now, we could have, for example, a 4x4. We may have diesel vehicles. We may have unleaded vehicles. But what the government, and particularly the United Kingdom, has already committed to is to try and actually remove those from society over the next decades. And what is happening at the moment in the United Kingdom is some very unusual initiatives to try and get you out of the diesel and unleaded vehicles into electric vehicles. Now, whilst we all want to ensure that perhaps spewing carbon monoxide out into the atmosphere is not a good thing, we do, and we're going to talk about the wider environmental challenges as well. But just on the exchange mechanisms, the government has put initiatives, and particularly local governments, have to try and incentivize people to get out of their cars to either take public transport. Interestingly, those vehicles are diesel-based, which pump out a lot of unnecessary emissions. But the incentives don't make sense, because if you had, say, for example, just bought a £50,000 diesel 4x4 and you're only offered a £500 incentive to do so, doesn't economically stack up. The second point is, and many people have pointed out, there are not enough charge points around the country. Yeah. And so even if you were to be a citizen who complies with the government wishes, you may not be able to, one, travel very far, and two, be able to charge your vehicle. And so here's the other side to the equation, which is, if everybody in the United Kingdom who was actually a qualified driver was to exchange their diesel and unleaded vehicles for an electric one, we're going to need a lot more power stations pumping out a lot more unpleasant carbon monoxide and many other unpleasant byproducts. So there's something that doesn't add up there. I wonder whether you can explain.
Well, no, I can't explain that. What I can explain is there's a big issue here, because we're talking about the government being too controlling. The fact that I can't explain it means that there's something wrong there. Are they being too controlling? Well, they've announced, and they announced this quite early on in the government. So, it announced that the UK government announced that the sale of new petrol and diesel cars will end in the UK by 2030.
Yes, which is not far away.
It's only 9 years now.
Yeah.
And then for the next 5 years, you can sell them. But they have to be, to drive a significant distance with zero emissions. So after that, so for example, you could have a hybrid or plug-in hybrid, that sort of thing. So it's net zero, because some of these hybrids will have a small engine to charge up the battery, that sort of thing. But after that, it's you can't sell any new petrol-driven or diesel-driven cars. That has to be the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard. But we're concentrating on here not on how good the cars are or how much fun they are to drive, but we're talking about whether the government's been controlling. Surely that is. Surely people can see, we'll be able to say, oh, we know what's best for you, so we're going to force you to drive with this sort of car. You don't really get that. So, I mean, it used to be the case that you would have people, I don't know whether this will stop, people driving with compressed gas, hydrogen.
Oh, yes. Yes.
PGA type of gas.
Yeah, very much so.
So are those, I've mentioned those, are those going to be illegal? And of course there is the whole science which we've discussed here, I think, on the show before, about the science behind electric cars, because in order for electric cars to work, you need to produce the electricity.
Yes.
So, is it actually going to cut down on carbon emissions overall? Maybe not. You've got to make the cars as well. And what about me? My classic Mercedes. What am I going to do with that? It bellows out lots of lovely blue smoke. Well, I guess this is not new. I can keep driving it.
Well, there you go. Now,
you can't control me.
We're getting there.
Actually, maybe they can.
Yeah. We're sort of slow, sort of social suffocation that's happening.
Like
now, here's the other thing, because here's another constraint, which is about what you can say and what you can't say.
Yes.
Now, we all want to have respect. We've talked about that before on the Mark and Pete show, and that's really important. We believe that you need to act with integrity, with morals, etc. And that's something that we would uphold all the time. However, the government, certainly in recent times, has some issues about the right to protest and the right to speak. And so, Clergyman Pete, I was going to ask you, and I know that you have joined rallies in the past, but sometimes the government issues some rules and regulations, and in fact also enforces the police to act in certain ways. And we've seen at certain times this is sometimes ends up with some confrontation on the streets. So what is your view on how the government sometimes mishandles a protest and this ability to be able to control people or not?
Well, the government, through the police and through legislation that is put into place, has put the police in an invidious position that that demonstrations are not meant to be allowed because of COVID regulations. So it sometimes is mishandled. And the mishandling comes from, this is my opinion on the just general policing though, of these sort of demonstrations, that if you're going to let a demonstration take place, you need to put the manpower in there to stop it getting out of hand. Right? That's what you need to do. And then when people need when people need to be moved on, because you've got such a level of manpower, you can then remove them quite easily if they need to be moved on. You don't get into the situation where people are able to fight you. You won't need to overwhelm them. Of course, that means paying for enough police.
Exactly.
And it may be. So I'm not saying the police are at fault. I'm saying the government are at fault. And here's how they've been at fault. It seems to me that wherever the information came from, wherever the commands came from, some types of demonstration of political persuasions that the government wants to allow to go ahead get treated with kid gloves, and others are treated very roughly. Now, this is denied speaking about specifically the Metropolitan Police, because London's where a lot of demonstrations happen. Metropolitan Police are London Police, for those outside the country who wouldn't know. The head of the Met Police, Cressida Dick, she said, "Well, the what you think is weak policing is actually a tactical decision." So that may be the case. But what we're seeing is the government moving against people being able to demonstrate at all, to be able to protest at all. And indeed, in the latest legislation that they're bringing forward, which has already gone through Parliament with its second reading, which means it probably will become law. Not definitely, but probably. It's not been finally voted on. This particular bill includes legislation to stop you from protesting if you cause a serious annoyance. Now, you, Mark, are seriously annoying all the time, so I think you should be arrested immediately. But you see how this sort of legislation is ill thought out. Just think how subjective that is. That's actually a direct quote from the legislation. So, yeah, the government is allowing itself more leeway in control of people. So yeah, we are seeing a shift in that direction. And what we do about it, well, I think the way to deal with this, I know this is going to be a long-term strategy, but it is at the ballot box. People don't get your votes if they're going to pass this sort of legislation, which is taking control, even if it means bringing in your hated rival. We saw that people didn't believe that would happen last time when Labour voters switched to Conservative because the Labour were being so silly about staying in the European Union. I think that's what people have to do. You may have to hold your nose to vote someone you don't like, but if this government is going to be too controlling, hold your nose, hold it tight, and vote the other way.
Yes. Well, look, one last point I was going to ask, and about governments that are controlling, and it's also about accountability.
That's
and
right,
the one subject is that a lot of our listeners are working for the healthcare sector, and particularly the National Health Service.
Yeah, that's true.
And last year, the government made a clear commitment, which was to increase salaries of frontline workers, nurses, doctors, and unfortunately has reneged on that. Now, whilst I do appreciate that that's under review, it is a worry, isn't it, that when the government can control, as it is right to control, things such as taxes and laws and salaries, but when it reneges on a deal, what's your view there? And this is where perhaps power becomes overwhelming and clouds one's judgment.
What can they do? Yes, I think then there does need to be the ability to protest and to demonstrate. I think that's where it goes. You need to make your voices heard. In the end, it's down to the ballot box. But yes, that's my view. If you're asking whether they should be able to demonstrate, yes, they should. The pandemic has been used as an excuse, it seems, to gain more power for the government. Or perhaps I should be more charitable, as a reason. It seemed to many people to be a good reason. But they need to give those powers back now. So if you are in the UK, find out, if you don't already know, find out who your MP is. You can look at the gov.uk website and find it out. And contact them. Contact them this weekend, write a letter to them. Make sure, if you're writing a letter or writing an email to them, that you include your full address, because they're only allowed to read and only allowed to act on messages from people who are within their constituency, and say you can't pass this coronavirus act. It's got to stop. You can't pass this police bill with the stopping demonstration stuff in it. If you don't do this, I'm not going to be voting for you. You work for me, remind them.
Well, maybe the control is with you, listeners.
Let's hope so.
We'd love to hear from you. Do you think that the government has just gone too far? Maybe it's got too much power, perhaps now, when we face some crisis and issues, that sometimes governments, the power just goes too far. Do you believe perhaps the other way, that maybe you would like to give more power to Boris Johnson and his cabinet and his MPs? Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, there we go. We know that you're in control, but we certainly would like to control our stories next time, and we'll be certainly coming back to you with
Nice
more
segue. Yeah.
topical topics with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.